You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. So a wild National Signing Day now in the rearview mirror. Let's recap all of it from a national perspective. Our buddy Sam Spiegelman has moved on to On3 Sports, where he's a national recruiting analyst. Good enough to spend a couple of minutes with us here. Hey, Sam, how are you, man? Thanks for the time.
Hey, Matt. Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Man, I said yesterday that was the wildest signing day that I can ever remember. I'm not big into hyperbole, but when you throw in all of the NIL conversations that surrounded it, the mudslinging among coaches, it certainly felt different than any other ones. How would you compare it to what you've seen covering this industry as long as you have?
Yeah, I would definitely, one of the first times where you start hearing about contracts out in the open and all these NIL deals factoring into equations. Obviously, it's not maybe the determining factor for everyone, but certainly a part of the equation that we're not accustomed to hearing. And, from a national perspective, you see teams like Texas A&M is obviously, I know it's the focal point of this, and making a national splash with guys in Louisiana, which is unheard of, and then South Florida and Walter Nolan in the Mississippi, Tennessee area, and obviously dominating in state. And you have to imagine it's part of the equation. And it's almost like college football is closer to the pros with like an NFL front office with trades and free agency. And the high school part is just almost like the draft part.
Sam, look, everybody is obviously weighing in on what Jimbo said. And he caught so many people off guard because of his tone, right? I mean, he was so adamant. But it, to many, feels almost laughable to deny the role that NIL had in A&M putting together their class. Again, you're as close to this as anybody who covers it. So give me some perspective there. What was your reaction to what Jimbo said?
Yeah, I think the biggest, when we're all kind of surprised is why not, why deny it or say that it's not a factor? Because it's certainly a factor, like I just alluded to. A&M is certainly an up-and-coming program, and I think that's maybe what Jimbo is maybe dismissing so quickly. A&M has made major strides since he arrived there. Obviously, they beat Alabama, which as being in the Baton Rouge market, when LSU beats Bama, that means that it's a good year for LSU fans. So I think that A&M has a reason to be excited, and I think, he wants to get a tribute to the on-the-field progression, his coaches doing well on the recruiting trail, which certainly you did see this year more than ever. But you have to be blind to say that the NIL is not a part of it. A&M has famous boosters now nationwide getting involved, and to look at what they did in Florida with Shamar Stewart, one of the best players in the country, regardless of position, the best player in Florida by many accounts. Jacoby Matthews, same deal in Louisiana, a guy that LSU very, very, very much wanted. It obviously came into play, at least a part of the equation.
Sam, I'm looking at the On3 Sports team rankings page. You all actually have a column. I'll zoom in here, Paulie, for those who are watching. There's actually a column, which is the average NIL column. And you list A&M's average NIL amount at $59,000. How did you come to that number? How did On3 Sports come to that number?
I wish I was smart enough to have told you how I came to that number, because I would be making a lot more money.
I love it.
This again. These are people above my pay grade that are factoring in what A&M has. They're getting these numbers from somewhere, some accounts, and all I know from just my angle of being boots on the ground in Texas a good chunk of the year and seeing this is A&M is dominating recruiting, not only in state, because they are. I mean, Texas put together a fantastic class, but then A&M is the amount of elite guys. It's completely risen year in year, and you have to just see that NIL. They've always talked about the Aggie ring and the opportunities that come to you when you go to Texas A&M. That has to be a part of the equation. life after football is such a big part of it that, for fans and, people you have to take into account. But now with the NIL opportunity, it's not just life after football. It's life during football or life because of football. And certainly, I'm a proponent of athletes getting paid for their name, likeness, and image. I think it's certainly deserving because they're the ones risking it on the field. And A&M boosters are certainly letting their players know that they care about them. And I think, whatever direction it's going in, A&M has figured it out quicker than most. And I think it's up to the rest of the country to either figure out how to compete with them or against them.
He is Sam Spiegelman, On 3 Sports, national recruiting analyst. We're taking a look back at signing day. What is the – okay, one more on A&M, then I want to move on. What is the national perspective when you talk to other coaches around the country on what Jimbo said? How are those comments being received outside of just Louisiana and Texas?
Yeah, well, in Louisiana and Texas, this is a dumpster fire.
Right, exactly. We know. We're all watching it burn.
Yeah, and that's that's where I am, boots on the ground. That is all I am seeing. I haven't even gotten other coaches weighing in, I think, because in the last, less than 24 hours, you are seeing just, it's unheard of. I mean, that's the only way I can put it, because until I get out of the area, I can't give you another perspective other than the dumpster fire that is going on, especially in Louisiana right now.
Follow him on Twitter at Sam Spiegs. What is your perspective on how Brian Kelly finished his first class? Actually, with still 5 spots to go.
Yeah, I think, Matt, we can remember when Ed Orgeron stepped in and had to kind of salvage Les Miles' really, really impressive class a couple of years ago, and he did a fantastic job. And Brian Kelly has a little bit more of a daunting task because he wasn't on the previous staff. There's really no holdover from that previous staff. When they stepped in days before the early signing period, to keep, a couple of these components, especially the in-state guys that are so essential, keeping Walker Howard in the fold, this is, Garrett Nussmeier, I thought was a really, really talented quarterback, and I still think he's got some great football ahead of him to follow up and really, after Mac Johnson transfers out, to restock behind Nuss and get Walker Howard in the fold. That's essential. That's a legacy quarterback, and he certainly was looking elsewhere. So it's to keep him in the fold. That was clutch. Will Campbell, again, left tackles do not grow on trees. The last best offensive tackle from this state ended up at Alabama with a first-round pick, Cam Robinson. Keeping Will Campbell in state when he had plenty of suitors across the country, essential. And then you closed out with obviously the guy that we talked about a ton, Quincy Wiggins, who's a 5-star talent. The future is out of the control for him, and keeping him in the fold in December was huge. Then you add a guy like Harold Perkins. Listen, it really hurts to lose Jacoby Matthews, an elite star in your backyard, and I think that LSU was in that up until Wednesday, and we all know that. It's a tough loss, especially to a conference division rival, But Harold Perkins is a very similar talent. Much like Jacoby Matthews, is a Swiss Army knife that is an elite impact defender. I think he's going to compete for playing time right away. Just that kind of dynamic player that reminds you a ton of someone like Derwin James, who you can't keep from the field. Even if it's special teams, I could see him making plays. The way they hit the transfer portal market, like I said, it's a lot like an NFL team, and you have to credit someone like Brian Polian, who's everyone knows who his dad was and what he accomplished, and you have to see him kind of work a similar way with using not only the recruiting, but the transfer portal to get impact players from the SEC that made plays on Saturdays this last fall against LSU. The kid from Missouri was an impact freshman in the SEC last year, and Greg Brooks and Joe Fuchsia that probably wanted to go to LSU coming out of high school are now going to be veterans in that DB room, which was really, did not play up to LSU standard last year. So what they're able to do, and they still have some wiggle room, this transfer portal thing is not going anywhere, and they have the spring to continue to address needs on the roster as they see fit. I think so far it's pretty commendable.
Hey, Sam, before you go, so much focus obviously on the day A&M had. We've talked a lot about LSU. Who else had an impactful day for better or worse on signing day here in the February signing period?
Yeah, it was pretty quiet, but I think Mario Cristobal getting Trevante Citizen out of this state is pretty signature. I think that's a guy that a lot of teams wanted. Billy Napier really wanted him. Brian Kelly really wanted him. I don't know what's going on with Auburn, but they really wanted him as well. Alabama to go and get Danny Lewis, another guy that LSU wanted and Florida wanted. There weren't the issue with the second signing period is there aren't so many pieces left on the board, but of the ones that are, they're all good pieces. So for Alabama, I think they signed 4 out of the state. That's a really great way to end with Aaron Anderson, who was a 5-star wide receiver. Shaz Preston right there, a top 50 prospect. Kendrick Law, a top 100 player. Then Danny Lewis, who was the most outstanding player we all saw in December. That's a really good way to finish for Alabama on a year that they were just playing in this national championship game.
Do you expect another big wave of transfer portal movement post spring football?
100%. Right now, they're coming in with expectations. A lot of these transfers are happening at LSU, at USC. Obviously Lane Kiffin is tearing it up. That's the Lane train for you. Nothing wrong with that. But now they have to start competing for jobs, and especially I think certain positions that quarterbacks that want to see the field quicker. If things aren't looking so good, they're going to hit the portal again. I think there's a whole second wave coming, especially with the immediate eligibility.
He is Sam Spiegelman, national recruiting analyst from On3 Sports. I'll give him a follow on Twitter at Sam Spiegs. We appreciate it, man. Thanks for spending some time with us today, bud.
Yep, have a good one.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.